A 7-year-old girl stands in a grimy corner bakery on the wrong side of town. She holds a loaf of bread tighter than her breath, whispering, "I promise to pay for this bread when I grow up." The storekeeper refuses. Other customers look away. Rain taps softly on the window, making the dull shop feel even colder. The girl's old pink dress is patched in places and her shoes are too small. She looks tired but tries to stand tall, holding the bread close to her chest. "Sweetheart," the baker says gently, though his voice sounds weary. "You can't take it if you don't have the money. Bread costs $4. She opens her hand, showing 3 wrinkled bills. "I only have this much," she says quietly. "Please, my mama's sick." "She said she'll pay soon." The baker shakes his head. "I'm sorry, little one. I can't give it to you for less." The people standing in line stay silent. One woman turns away, pretending to check her phone. A man coughs and looks at the floor. No one helps. In the back corner, a man in a dark overcoat slowly looks up from his coffee. Vincent Moretti. In this neighborhood, everyone knows his name. Some call him a businessman. Others whisper the truth, that he is a mafia boss, dangerous and powerful. Vincent watches the girl. She is thin and pale, but her eyes are strong. Something about her makes him stop breathing for a moment. He feels a strange pull in his chest, a feeling he thought was gone forever. The baker tries again. "Please, little one. You have to put the bread back." Then a calm, deep voice fills the room. "Give her the bread." Everyone freezes. The baker looks up, shocked. "Mr. Moretti." "I didn't see you there." Vincent walks to the counter. His shoes click against the floor, echoing in the small shop. He takes out a $100 bill and places it down. "Bread's paid for. Keep the change." The girl looks up at him with wide, confused eyes. "I didn't want someone else to pay," she whispers. "Mama says we shouldn't owe anybody." Vincent kneels so his eyes meet hers. His voice softens in a way no one has heard in years. "You don't owe me anything," he says gently. "Just take the bread. Your mama needs you to be strong." The girl hesitates, then nods and gives a small, grateful smile. "Thank you, mister." And that's when Vincent notices it. A small, star-shaped birthmark on her wrist. For a second, the world around him fades away. The sound of rain, the smell of bread, the murmurs of people, and all disappear. He's seen that mark before. Long ago on another little girl's arm, his daughter's. Vincent's heart stops. The memory crashes into him like a wave he can't escape. He feels his throat tighten, his hands go cold. For the first time in years, the feared mafia boss feels something real. And it hurts more than any bullet ever could. That night, the city felt heavier than usual. Rain slid down the windows of Vincent Moretti's black car as it rolled through empty streets. Neon lights blinked against puddles, turning them red and blue like warning signs. Vincent sat in the back seat, silent. The loaf of bread still replayed in his mind. The girl's small hands, her trembling voice, that birthmark. He couldn't stop seeing it. 3 years had passed since his wife and daughter were killed in a shootout meant for him. Since then, Vincent had lived like a ghost, cold, careful, and cruel when needed. The name Moretti still made people lower their eyes. But the man behind it had already died inside. He entered his mansion on the hill, grand, polished, and lifeless. Marble floors, gold frames, quiet halls, everything clean, everything empty. He poured himself a glass of whiskey and stared out the wide window overlooking the city. Somewhere out there, a little girl with his daughter's eyes was eating a piece of bread he'd bought. He didn't know why it mattered, but it did. A soft knock broke his thoughts. Marco, his right-hand man, stepped in. Middle-aged, loyal, the only person Vincent halfway trusted. "You went down to the east side again," Marco said carefully. Vincent didn't answer. "People saw you," Marco continued. "A few of the boys are talking. They're saying the boss bought bread for some street kid." Vincent's jaw tightened. "They have time to gossip. They have time to dig graves." "Tell them that," Marco sighed. "You're making them nervous, Vince. Showing mercy in this business, it looks like weakness." Vincent turned from the window. His voice was quiet but sharp. "It wasn't mercy. It was a loaf of bread." Marco studied him. "You've never cared before. Why now?" Vincent didn't reply. He couldn't explain what he didn't understand himself. He just saw that face, pale, rain-soaked, stubborn, and the mark on her wrist, that tiny star that dragged him straight into the past. When Marco left, Vincent went to his study. He opened a drawer and pulled out an old photo, a picture of his wife smiling, holding their little girl on her lap. His throat tightened. The girl in the photo had that same birthmark. He sat in silence for a long time, staring at the picture. Then he picked up the phone. "Find out who that child is," he told Marco's voice on the other end. "The one from the bakery? Her name, her family, everything." Marco hesitated. "You sure you want to go down that road, boss?" Vincent's eyes darkened. "I just want to know who she is." When the call ended, Vincent poured another drink, but it didn't help. He walked through the long, empty halls, past his daughter's old piano, her favorite toy still resting on the windowsill. The house had become a museum of ghosts. Outside, thunder rolled again, shaking the windows. Vincent pressed a hand to the glass, staring into the storm. For the first time in years, he whispered to the silence, almost afraid of his own voice. "Is that you, Bella?" He didn't expect an answer. Only the echo of rain replied, soft and endless. 3 days later, Marco returned with a folder. He placed it on Vincent's desk like it carried a secret too heavy to touch. "I found her," he said quietly. Vincent looked up from the cold cup of coffee in his hand. "Name? Lila Romano. 7 years old. Lives on Rose Street in the housing block near the river." Marco hesitated. "Lives with her mother. Works nights at Rosie's Diner. Widow?" "Widow?" Vincent's voice dropped. "Yeah," Marco said. "Husband was killed 2 years ago in a crossfire outside a club. Wrong place, wrong time." Vincent's hand froze around the coffee cup. A muscle twitched in his jaw. "What club?" "Club Verona." The air in the room turned to ice. Club Verona, when his club, his war. His bullet. Vincent's heartbeat slowed into something dark and steady. "Get the car." The diner lights flickered against the wet street as Vincent's black sedan pulled up. It was raining again. It always rained when ghosts followed him. He stepped inside, the bell above the door giving a faint, broken jingle. The place smelled of coffee, grease, and weary souls. Behind the counter, a woman was wiping down a booth. Blonde hair tied back, tired eyes. Movement slow but graceful. "Elena Romano," Marco whispered beside him. Vincent froze. The name hit him like an echo from another life. He remembered her now. Years ago at a family gathering, laughter, music. His wife's cousin. She'd been young, full of light. Now that light had dimmed, replaced by exhaustion. But the face was the same. When she turned and saw him, the color drained from her cheeks. "Vincent?" she whispered, almost not believing. He nodded slightly. "Hello, Elena." Her hand trembled, gripping the edge of the counter. "You shouldn't be here. I came to talk. There's nothing left to say between us." Vincent looked around the diner. A few truckers, 2 teenagers, the hum of a jukebox. No one was listening, but her fear was real. He lowered his voice. "I saw your daughter," her breath caught. "Lila?" "She was at the bakery," Vincent said. "She was hungry. I helped her." Elena's lips trembled. "You, what?" She said her mama was sick. "She shouldn't have said that," Elena whispered. "We're fine." Vincent's eyes narrowed. "You're not fine. You're surviving." He took a step closer. She took one back. "Don't do this," she said quietly. "Please, Vincent." "Not her." "Not her what?" Her voice broke. "You've already taken enough from me." The words hit harder than any bullet. Vincent's throat went dry. "What are you talking about?" Elena's eyes filled with tears. "You don't even know, do you? The night my husband died, he was working for you. He was driving one of your shipments. He wasn't supposed to be there, but they needed a driver. When the shooting started, he didn't even have a gun." Vincent's stomach dropped. You didn't care," she snapped. "No one cared. Just another body on your list." Silence fell between them, heavy as rain. Vincent's voice softened. "If I'd known, but you didn't. You never look down, Vincent. You only see what you want to see." He had no defense, just the truth, and it burned. Then, through the reflection in the diner window, he saw movement. A small figure outside holding an umbrella too big for her hands. Lila, she was waiting by the curb, watching through the glass, eyes wide, curious. Elena followed his gaze and gasped. "She's here," Vincent's breath caught. The birthmark and the tiny star on that little wrist flashed again under the streetlight. Every sound in the diner vanished. The ticking clock, the murmuring customers, the rain, gone. It was just that mark, that impossible mark staring back at him. He whispered almost to himself, "She looks just like..." Elena's voice cut through him. "Don't say it," but it was too late. The thought was already alive. A dangerous trembling thing inside his chest. Could it be? Could this child be connected to his blood? To his sins? To everything he lost? Vincent turned back to Elena, his voice shaking for the first time in years. "Elena, whose child is she?" She didn't answer, just looked at him with eyes full of fear and something else. Guilt. Outside, lightning split the sky, and in that flash of white, Vincent Moretti saw his past staring back at him, in the eyes of a little girl who carried his daughter's face. The storm hadn't stopped for 3 days. Vincent watched it from his office window, the city lights bleeding into the fog like bruises. He hadn't slept. Couldn't. That birthmark haunted him. The girl's smile. Elena's fear. the truth clawing at the edge of his sanity. He used to control this city with silence and steel. Now he couldn't even control his thoughts. Marco stood by the door, nervous. "Boss, word's spreading. People saw you at the diner again. You're starting to look..." Soft. Vincent turned. His eyes were calm but deadly calm, the kind that made men rethink breathing. "Let them talk." "Vincent," Marco said, stepping forward. "These streets watch everything. You buy bread for a kid, they whisper. You show your face in the slums, they wonder what weakness you're hiding. Sooner or later someone's going to test it." Vincent looked back out at the rain. "Let them try." Marco's jaw clenched. "Then you better be ready." Because they already did. He dropped a photo on the desk. A picture of Lila, taken from across the street, grainy, zoomed in. Vincent's pulse slowed. "Where did you get this?" "It came in the mail this morning." No. The air between them froze. Vincent picked up the photo. Lila was smiling in it, walking home from school, a backpack twice her size. Someone had circled the birthmark on her wrist in red ink. That tiny red circle burned hotter than any fire. That night, the rain turned to thunder. Vincent drove alone through the city, past the same bakery, the same corner where everything started. He parked near Rose Street, headlights off. From the car, he watched the dim glow of apartment 3C. A shadow moved across the curtain. Elena, pacing, maybe praying. Then another shape, smaller, sitting at the kitchen table, coloring something with broken crayons. Lila. He should have driven away. But instead, he stepped out, the rain soaking through his coat. He needed to see her just once more, alive, safe. When the elevator in the old building didn't work, he took the stairs. Each step echoed like a heartbeat. Slow, steady, wrong. He reached the 3rd floor. The hallway light flickered. Buzz, flash, dark buzz. A shadow moved at the far end. "Who's there?" Vincent called. No answer. Then, a door slammed. Fast. Not Elena's. One apartment over. Vincent's hand moved to the gun under his coat, instinct sharp. Old habits never died. He waited. Silence. Then he turned toward Elena's door. Knocked once, it opened a crack. Elena's eyes were wide, afraid. "Vincent, what are you doing here?" "There's someone watching your place." Her face drained of color. "What?" "Don't open the door for anyone. Not even the landlord." He stepped inside before she could protest. Lila looked up from the table, smiling. "Hi, Mr. Vincent." The sound of her voice, pure, soft, hit him like light in a room full of graves. He forced a smile. "Hi, kiddo." Elena crossed her arms. "You shouldn't be here." "I got a message," he said, handing her the photo. "Someone's keeping eyes on you." Elena stared at it, shaking. "Oh my God, why?" "Because they know she matters to me," Vincent said quietly. "And in my world, that's blood in the water." A shiver ran down Elena's spine. "You mean they'll come after her?" "Yes," lightning flashed outside. For a second, the window lit up white, and in that flash, Vincent saw movement. A figure across the street, watching. He moved before he thought. The glass shattered, one clean shot, Elena screamed. Lila ducked under the table. Vincent pulled his gun, eyes scanning the window, heart a steady drumbeat of rage. "Stay down," he barked, another flash outside. A second gunman. Then the thud of footsteps running through puddles. He fired twice. Silence followed. When the echo faded, only the rain spoke again. Vincent turned back to them. Elena clutching Lila, both trembling. He lowered his weapon slowly. "They're testing me," he said. "They think mercy made me weak." Elena's voice shook. "And what are you going to do?" Vincent's eyes hardened and gray ice over fire. "I'm going to remind them that even mercy can bleed." Minutes later, he was back in the car, soaked and furious, hands trembling on the steering wheel. For the first time in years, fear wasn't for himself. It was for a child who might be his blood. He looked at her photo again, the red circle around the birthmark. Then he whispered to the empty car a vow that felt like a sentence. "You touch her and I'll burn the city down." The storm answered with thunder. And for the first time in a long time, Vincent meant every word. The rain stopped, but the city didn't rest. Sirens moaned somewhere far off, echoing through the alleys like ghosts calling each other's names. Inside his office, Vincent sat alone, a half-empty glass beside a folder thick with secrets. Marco entered quietly. "They hit 2 of our warehouses last night," he said. Vincent didn't move. "They're not after the business," Vincent murmured. "They're after her." Marco hesitated. "Boss, we found something else. You told me to dig on Elena Romano's past. You'd better hear it from me before you read it." Vincent's eyes lifted. Cold. Waiting. Marco laid another envelope on the desk. 7 years ago, Elena worked bookkeeping at the Verona Club. Her husband, Anthony Romano, wasn't supposed to be on that truck the night of the shooting. He took the job last minute. Vincent's voice came out like gravel. I know that story. He died because of me. That's not all. Marco swallowed. Elena gave birth 2 months after the accident. The air thinned. Vincent's pulse slowed, heavy and deep. What did you just say? She was pregnant, boss. Doctors listed the father as unknown. But she stopped using her maiden name around the same time you disappeared to Sicily for a few months. You remember that trip? Memory hit like a blade. A single night after a funeral. 2 broken people drowning in grief and whiskey. He remembered her. He remembered the rain then too. And suddenly the timeline snapped together like a loaded gun. Vincent rose from his chair. The glass fell and shattered across the marble floor. Get out, he said softly. Vincent, I said get out. Marco left without another word. Vincent drove to Rose Street again, this time without headlights. The sky above was bruised purple, the streets empty, but his heart pounded loud enough to drown out the city. When he reached the building, he didn't knock. He simply opened the door. Elena was at the table, helping Lila with homework. The child smiled when she saw him. Mr. Vincent, she chirped. I drew a star like the one on my arm. Look. Her drawing was clumsy, bright, full of hope. The same little 5-pointed star that lived on her wrist. Vincent's breath caught. The paper trembled in his hands. Elena stood quickly. Vincent, you can't just... He looked up, eyes burning. Is she mine? Elena froze. What? Tell me the truth. Lila blinked, confused. Mama? Elena's mouth opened, but no words came. Vincent's voice cracked now, years of control breaking apart. I need to know. That night at the club before everything went to hell, was it me? Elena's hands began to shake. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Vincent, please. Not in front of her. Then tell me so I can walk out and never look back, he said. But if she's mine and if she's ours, I won't lose her too. Silence. The only sound was the slow tick of the wall clock, marking each heartbeat like a countdown. Finally, Elena nodded once. Tiny. Barely there. Yes, the word shattered the air. Vincent staggered as if struck. Lila watched, frightened, not understanding why the grown-ups were crying. He knelt in front of her, his voice breaking. Lila, sweetheart. I'm sorry. For everything, she frowned softly. Why are you sorry? Because I wasn't there, he whispered. Because people I trusted hurt you without even knowing who you were. Elena turned away, covering her face. You can't just come back and fix this, Vincent. You live in a world that kills things like her innocence. Vincent looked up at her, eyes red, voice low. Then I'll tear that world apart before it touches her. Outside, tires screeched. A car stopped hard. Lila flinched. Elena gasped. Through the window, Vincent saw shadows moving. Men with guns stepping out of a van. The rival family had found them. He pulled his pistol, motioned them to the back hallway. Go, he hissed. Now. The hallway light buzzed weakly as they ran. Lila clutched his hand, her tiny fingers ice cold. Are you scared? She asked. He looked down at her, heartbeat pounding. Terrified, he said. That's how I know I love you. The door behind them exploded. Shards of wood flew like shrapnel. Vincent spun, firing. One man dropped. Another ducked behind the van. Keep moving, he shouted. Don't stop no matter what. Elena dragged Lila toward the stairwell. Gunfire echoed off the walls, sparks flashing from metal pipes. When they reached the bottom floor, Vincent slammed the door shut behind them and pushed them toward the alley. Take her, he barked at Marco, who appeared from the shadows, gun drawn. Get them out of the city. Now, what about you? Marco yelled over the chaos. Vincent reloaded, eyes cold as the barrel smoke. I'll clean up the mess I made. As Elena and Lila disappeared into the rain, Vincent turned back toward the burning stairwell. His fingers tightened around the trigger. He wasn't running anymore, this time. He was going to make the devil pay for trying to take his daughter twice. The night cracked open with gunfire. Vincent moved like a shadow through the stairwell, each step shaking the building. The air stank of gunpowder and rain. Muffled screams echoed from somewhere above. Neighbors hiding, praying the monsters would pass them by. He had lived his whole life inside violence, but this felt different. This wasn't business. This was personal. A bullet whined past his head, splintering the wall. He returned fire, sharp and controlled. A man dropped in the hallway, his gun clattering against the floor. Another shouted, "He's in here!" Vincent pressed his back to the wall, his breath heavy. His mind wasn't on the fight, it was on Lila, her voice, her tiny hand clutching his. The star on her wrist glowing faintly in the flash of gunfire. That star was his compass now. He stepped into the open and fired again. 2 shots, 2 bodies down. The rest scattered like rats, then silence. Only the hiss of rain through the shattered window. Vincent's phone buzzed. Marco's voice came through, ragged. We got them out. Heading north. But listen, there's more coming, boss. This isn't a hit. It's a purge. Vincent's eyes narrowed. Who ordered it? I think it's Luciano's men. They found out about the girl. For a moment, Vincent didn't speak. Then his voice came low, steady, terrifying. Then Luciano dies tonight. He didn't wait for backup. He didn't need it. By the time he reached the docks, lightning was splitting the sky like the city itself was breaking apart. Oil drums burned along the pier, casting orange light on the rain-slick concrete. Men waited in the shadows, armed, nervous, expecting him. He walked straight into them. No hesitation. No mercy. The first one raised his gun. Vincent shot him through the wrist, then the chest. Another ran. Vincent's bullet found his spine before his scream did. Then Luciano appeared from behind a crate. Slick suit, gold chain, a smile too sharp to be human. Well, well, Luciano said. The great Vincent Moretti. I heard you went soft. Feeding kids now? Vincent stepped closer, gun steady at his side. You came after my blood. Luciano grinned. Everyone has blood, Vince. Yours just happens to make better headlines. He flicked his wrist. 10 guns rose behind him. Vincent didn't flinch. He glanced once at the ground, then at the storm, and smiled coldly. Wrong night to test God's patience. Thunder roared as the first bullet flew. Vincent dove behind a stack of crates, returning fire in short, perfect bursts. The smell of cordite filled the air. Sparks danced across wet metal. Every time he squeezed the trigger, another face fell into the rain. He was outnumbered, but his fury was old, patient, trained. Luciano's men shouted, fired wildly. One rushed him with a knife. Vincent caught his wrist, twisted and slammed the blade into his throat. The body collapsed at his feet. A chill ran through him, not from fear but from clarity. He was past saving, but she wasn't. That thought kept him alive. Minutes later, the dock was quiet except for rain and Vincent's ragged breathing. Luciano tried to crawl toward a gun that wasn't there anymore. Vincent kicked it away and knelt beside him. You sent men after a little girl, he said softly. You broke the code. Luciano coughed blood. You broke it first, the day you fell in love with the idea of redemption. Vincent's eyes flickered, and something human, something broken. Maybe. But tonight I'm not looking for redemption. He raised the gun. I'm looking for peace. The shot echoed across the water. Rain swallowed the sound, dragging it down into the dark. By dawn, the city was trembling. News of the massacre spread through every bar and alley. Luciano's empire burned, and everyone knew who lit the match. Vincent drove to an abandoned church on the edge of town. His coat was soaked with blood, not all of it his. He entered the dark nave, the smell of incense and rot mixing in the cold air. He knelt before the altar, the same place he'd once knelt to bury his wife. His hands shook as he set down his gun. Father, he whispered to the silence, I don't know how to pray anymore, but if you're still listening, take it out on me. Just let her live. Thunder rolled again, far away. A broken stained glass window let in a flash of light, blue and red. Police lights reflected from outside. They were closing in. Marco's car screeched to a stop outside. He ran in, bleeding from his shoulder. They found the safe house, he gasped. Elena and Lila, they're gone. Vincent froze. Gone where? Marco's face said everything. Taken. The words hit like a knife. Vincent's knees gave out. His hand slammed the marble floor, leaving a smear of blood. No, he whispered. Not again. He stood, eyes empty, voice low. Who? Luciano's cousin. The ones who stayed behind. They want revenge for what happened at the docks. Vincent grabbed his gun. His wound screamed in protest, but rage drowned out the pain. Then hell's about to get crowded. The warehouse where they were held was a ruin at the city's edge. All rust, concrete, and silence. He entered alone. No backup, no plan. Just purpose. He moved through the dark like a storm given flesh. One guard turned, flashlight sweeping. He never got to shout. Another reached for his radio. The bullet hit before the word boss left his mouth. Vincent kicked open the last door. Inside, Lila tied to a chair, a bruise on her cheek. Elena screaming against the gag in her mouth. The man holding the gun to the girl's head smirked. You kill our boss, we kill yours. Vincent stepped forward, calm, quiet, deadly. She's not my weakness, he said. She's my reason. Then he fired. The bullet tore through the gunman's skull. The rest of the world moved in slow motion. The scream, the fall, the echo that felt like judgment itself. He ran to Lila, cutting the ropes. She threw her arms around his neck, shaking. I knew you'd come, she sobbed. Mama said you would. Vincent's heart cracked open completely. He held her tight, whispering, I came for you like I should have long ago. Elena cried, relief and pain mixed together. But as Vincent turned to free her, another shot rang out. He stumbled, looked down. Blood bloomed across his shirt like a crimson flower. A surviving thug stood in the shadows, gun smoking, eyes wild. Vincent turned, raised his weapon, fired once. The man dropped, but Vincent was already falling. Lila screamed. Elena caught him, lowering him gently to the floor. "Stay with me," she cried. "Vincent, please." He smiled weakly, reaching up to touch Lila's face. "You're safe now," he whispered. "That's all that matters." His eyes drifted toward the ceiling, the cracked roof where morning light began to pour through. And in that light he saw it again, that little star glowing on her wrist. "You keep your promise, okay?" he said softly. "Grow up, live free, feed others. No more hunger." Lila nodded through tears. "I promise." His hand fell away, and the storm finally was over. The sirens came late, too late. By the time the police lights painted the warehouse walls red and blue, the fight was already over. Only smoke, broken glass, and a single heartbeat slowing in the dark. Vincent lay on the cold floor, head resting in Elena's lap. Rain dripped through a hole in the ceiling, tracing rivers across his blood-stained shirt. Lila pressed her small hands against the wound, whispering over and over, "Please don't die, please don't die." Vincent tried to speak but coughed instead, a sound wet and deep. His eyes searched their faces, memorizing them. The woman he'd once loved, the child he never got to raise. He managed a breath that trembled. "Elena, the papers in my coat pocket." She fumbled through the pocket, pulling out an envelope. Inside were deeds, accounts, transfer papers, and everything he owned. "Take it," he rasped. "Sell it all. Move far away. Somewhere she can forget my name." Elena shook her head, tears falling fast. "You can tell her yourself. You're not—" He stopped her with a faint smile. "Don't lie to a dying man." A chill moved through the room, the kind that feels like the soul noticing the door. The sirens outside grew louder. Lila's voice cracked. "But you promised we'd bake bread together." Vincent brushed her cheek with a trembling thumb. "We will," he whispered. "Every time you feed someone, I'll be there." Then his eyes turned toward the broken window. Dawn was coming, pale gold light crawling across the blood-soaked floor. He exhaled one last time, almost peacefully. The city outside kept breathing. Inside, everything stopped. For a moment, no one moved. Even the rain seemed to pause. Elena pressed her forehead to his chest, whispering a prayer too small to reach heaven. Lila sat beside them, hugging her knees, staring at the faint star on her wrist, the same shape that marked his grave. Then the door burst open. Marco stumbled in, gun still drawn, eyes wide when he saw the body. "No," he muttered. "Boss." He dropped to his knees beside them. The man who once called Vincent Moretti untouchable now shook like a child. "Police are coming," Marco said through clenched teeth. "You have to go. They'll call it a massacre. You'll both be targets," Elena nodded numbly. "Where do we go?" Marco looked down at Vincent, then back at the little girl. Somewhere he'd never look and somewhere kind. He helped them into a waiting car. As they pulled away, Elena looked back once, the warehouse shrinking, the city waking. For the first time, she realized the monster who'd ruined her life had also saved it. By nightfall, the streets were whispering. The Moretti empire, gone. The docks burned. The clubs were raided. Men who once swore loyalty vanished or surrendered. Marco dismantled everything piece by piece exactly as Vincent had ordered. He donated the money under new names, built shelters in the poorest blocks, schools where bullets used to fly. People didn't know who paid for it all. They just called it the Angels Fund. Elena and Lila moved north to a small coastal town. They rented a bakery with peeling paint and a window that faced the sea. The first thing they hung inside was a sign, hand-painted by Lila. "No child leaves hungry. Promises accepted." Every morning the smell of bread drifted through the streets. People started calling her the girl who feeds everyone. When they asked why, she always smiled the same way her father once had. "Because someone bought my first loaf," she said, "and he told me I already paid for it." Sometimes, when the wind blew in from the harbor, the little bell over the bakery door rang on its own. Lila would look up, heart fluttering, certain she saw a tall man in a dark coat standing just outside. But when she blinked, he was gone, leaving only footprints that faded into the rain. Years passed. The city changed. The legend of Vincent Moretti became a bedtime warning, then a rumor, then dust. But in the corners of that city, the places where no one used to care, there were free loaves of bread waiting for anyone hungry enough to ask. And in every bakery window of that small northern town, a tiny carved star gleamed near the register. Lila had them made by hand. One for every promise her father ever broke, and one for the single promise he kept. "Would you like me to move on to Section 8? The last promise. Next, the final emotional crescendo where the past and the legacy collide one last time, closing the story with a haunting cinematic chill. The sea was gray that morning, heavy as if it carried secrets beneath its waves. The small bakery on the hill had been open for 7 years, but it still smelled like new beginnings. Coffee, sugar, warm bread, and rain. Inside, Lila Moretti, now grown, wiped the glass display and smiled at a boy counting coins on the counter. "You can take it," she said softly. "You can pay me when you grow up." The boy blinked, then grinned, a reflection of herself long ago. The words hung in the air like a ghost that refused to fade. For a heartbeat, she could almost hear her father's voice behind them. Low, rough, full of warmth he'd never learned to show. Outside, the town was waking, fishermen calling to each other, church bells ringing, gulls crying over the surf. To everyone here, Lila was just the girl with the star mark who fed the hungry. To herself, she was a memory still breathing. In the back room stood a framed newspaper, yellowed and cracked. Mafia boss Vincent Moretti found dead in gang war. People who entered the bakery sometimes whispered about it. Lila never told them the man in that photo once carried her on his shoulders in her dreams. She read the headlines sometimes just to remind herself how stories lie. The world remembered him as a criminal. She remembered him as a man who showed up when no one else did. That afternoon, a storm rolled in fast, the kind that turned the sky to iron and the air to salt. Elena, her mother, came to lock the doors early. "We'll open again after the rain," she said. But Lila hesitated, staring at the clouds. "Let it stay open," she murmured. "Someone might still come." Elena studied her daughter's face, older now but carrying the same unyielding eyes. Then she nodded and left a single lamp burning. As the first thunder cracked, the bell above the door rang. Lila looked up. A man stood there, tall in a dark coat soaked from the downpour. His face was hidden beneath the brim of a hat, shadowed, familiar. For a second, she thought her heart had tricked her. The man didn't speak. He only stepped forward, water dripping onto the tiles. He laid a small object on the counter, an old brass coin tarnished with age. "Tab's been waiting a long time," he said. His voice was rough, deep, the exact tone she remembered from a dream she could never quite shake. Lila's fingers trembled as she picked up the coin. The edges were worn smooth, but a faint engraving still caught the light. A 5-pointed star. When she looked up again, the man was gone. The door swayed open, rain sweeping in, the bell singing its lonely note. For a long time she stood there, coin in hand, heart thundering louder than the storm. Then she whispered into the empty shop, "Debt paid." The wind carried the words out into the night, into the city that had once drowned in its own sins. Somewhere out there, she hoped he heard them. Days later, the storm cleared. Sunlight spilled through the windows, catching the flower dust in golden specks, floating gentle like souls that refused to leave. Lila placed the brass coin beside the register and smiled at every child who came in. To them, she said, "If you're ever hungry, promises are enough." Across the city, small bakeries began doing the same. Free loaves, anonymous donations, whispers of a story about a man who traded bullets for bread. No one remembered his name anymore. Only his promise, and sometimes on quiet nights, when the sea was calm and the wind soft, a figure in a dark coat could be seen standing on the pier, watching the bakery window, smoke from his cigarette fading into mist. Then he'd turn, step into the fog, and vanish as the tide rolled in. One evening, Lila wrote a single line on a scrap of parchment and placed it inside the bakery window for everyone to see. He spent his life taking from others, but gave it all back to one little girl. And in the end, love was the only debt he ever truly repaid. The wind caught the paper and pressed it flat against the glass. A last heartbeat, a last whisper, a last promise kept. Morning light poured across the harbor like forgiveness spilling over a scar. The sea was quiet again. The gulls circled lazily above the pier, and the air smelled of salt, yeast, and memory. The bakery opened at dawn, just as it always had. Lila Moretti tied her apron, brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, and switched the little sign on the door from closed to open. The same sign her mother painted years ago still hung above the window. No child leaves hungry. Promises accepted. The first customers were fishermen coming off the boats. They smiled when they saw her, handing her coins she always pretended to count. They never noticed how she paused between each sale, glancing toward the sea, as if expecting someone to walk out of the fog. Every morning when the sunlight hit the counter just right, she would see a faint reflection beside her own. Broad shoulders, a dark coat, the suggestion of a smile that belonged to another lifetime. It was never there for long, just enough to make her heart stumble before it vanished back into the light. Years passed like gentle tides. The town grew around her bakery, new homes, schools, laughter. But in the evenings, when the shutters closed and the ovens cooled, Lila kept one ritual that never changed. She would light a small candle and place it by the window. Beside it sat a brass coin, tarnished but still showing that tiny 5-pointed star. She never told anyone what it meant. She only whispered, "Good night, Papa." On the anniversary of the night he died, storms always found the coast. No matter the season, rain would sweep through town, soft but certain. Locals joked that the weather mourned someone. Lila knew better. She'd open the door, let the wind rush in and listen. Sometimes, hidden in the thunder, she swore she heard a man's voice, hoarse, familiar, saying, "Keep your promise." When Lila turned 30, she started a foundation. She called it the Angel's Bread. It began as a single donation box beside her register. Within a year, bakeries across the city carried the same name. Children who couldn't pay simply took what they needed. Every loaf, every coin, every act of kindness carried the same invisible seal, a small carved star pressed into the crust before baking. People began to talk again, not about gang wars or crime bosses, but about a story whispered between alleyways, of a man who once ruled the city with fear and then died trying to save a child. No one could prove he'd existed. No one needed to. At night, when the wind blew down from the hills, it carried the scent of warm bread instead of smoke. The same streets that had once bled under his name now breathed under hers. The ghosts were quieter, and for the first time the city slept without flinching. Elena grew older, her hair silver like seafoam. She often sat by the bakery window, smiling at the children who came and went. Sometimes she'd tell them a story, about a man who thought he was too broken to love and a promise that taught him how. The children would listen wide-eyed, crumbs on their cheeks, hearts unknowingly shaped by redemption. One evening, Lila walked to the pier alone. The sky burned gold and violet. The tide licked at the wood. She carried a loaf wrapped in cloth, still warm. She broke it in half and dropped one piece into the sea. "For the hungry," she whispered. "Even the ones beneath the waves." The wind rose suddenly, swirling around her, lifting her hair. She closed her eyes. In the rush of air, a voice, deep, faint and full of peace, seemed to murmur back, "I'm proud of you, little one." When she opened her eyes, the horizon was empty. Only the candlelight from her bakery shimmered in the distance, a single stubborn flame against the coming night. Years later, after Elena's passing, Lila wrote one last letter and tucked it beneath the counter. It read, "To whoever takes this bakery after me, if a hungry child ever stands here and says they'll pay when they grow up, believe them, because someone once believed me." That night the wind moved through town like a sigh. It rattled the bakery bell once, looked soft, familiar, then faded toward the sea, and somewhere beyond the horizon, where the storms sleep and the city lights cannot reach, a man in a dark coat walked along the shore, footprints glowing faintly in the moonlight. He didn't look back. He didn't need to. The debt was paid. The bread was shared. The promise had grown up. Decades later, the town had changed again. The old cobblestone streets had turned to asphalt. Electric trams hummed where carriages once rolled, but the small bakery on the hill still stood, its bricks worn smooth by rain and time, its windows glowing every morning before sunrise. The paint on the sign had faded, but the words remained clear. No child leaves hungry. Promises accepted. People called it the Angel's Bakery. No one alive remembered who the angel was, but every family in town could tell you the story. Passed down, reshaped, softened by time. They said that long ago, a little girl once promised to pay for bread when she grew up. And that promise became something greater, a chain of kindness stretching across generations. Each loaf given freely carried a small carved star, and children learned what adults forgot, that mercy once given multiplies. Sometimes, travelers came from far away just to taste the bread, saying it felt familiar, as if it carried a warmth they couldn't name. They left coins in the jar and notes that said things like, "For my father, for my daughter, for the one who fed me when no one else did." The wind off the harbor carried those words like prayers. One winter evening, the bakery closed early. Snow fell in thick, soft waves, burying footprints almost as soon as they were made. Inside, a young woman, a new owner, barely 20, swept the floors and hummed a tune she didn't know was ancient. She found an old letter tucked under the counter, yellowed and fragile. The ink had faded, but the words were still there. "If a hungry child ever stands here and says they'll pay when they grow up, believe them, because someone once believed me." The girl smiled. She folded the note and placed it in a frame beside the register. That night, when she turned off the lights, the wind moved through the bakery bell, One soft chime, though no one stood at the door. At dawn, the girl returned to open. A single loaf sat waiting on the counter, still warm though no oven had been lit. Pressed into the crust was a tiny 5-pointed star. She froze, heart pounding. Outside, the snow was untouched. No footprints, no signs of life. She wrapped the loaf carefully, placed it by the window, and whispered, "Thank you." The candle beside it flickered once and then burned steady and bright. Across the sea, the storm that had haunted this coast for years never returned again. The fishermen said the ocean finally made peace with the sky, and on quiet nights when fog covered the harbor, you could still see a shape moving through it. Tall, coat flapping, hat low, leaving no prints behind. They said it was the guardian of promises. Others said it was just the wind, but sometimes, when the bakery bell rang for no reason at all, children would look up, smile, and whisper, "Thank you, Mr. Vincent." The camera would pull back now, past the bakery, past the town, over the waves, and far out at sea. Beneath the shifting clouds, a single brass coin rests at the bottom. The engraving of the star is nearly worn away, but the light catches it just enough to gleam one last time before the current buries it in sand. A promise kept, a debt forgiven, a life that began in crime and ended in grace, and as the screen fades to black, a final voice, soft, distant, almost like an echo of Vincent himself, murmurs, "You never owed me anything, kid. You just had to grow up." Then silence. Then the sound of the bakery bell. One last ring that feels like eternity exhaling.